Our reading for this morning is Exodus 20, verses 1 through 20. I invite you now to listen to the word of our Lord as it may speak to us. Then God spoke all these words. I am the Lord your God who brought you out of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. You must have no other gods before me. Do not make an idol for yourself, no form whatsoever of anything in the sky above or on the earth below or in the waters under the earth. Do not bow down to them or worship them, because I, the Lord your God, am a passionate God. I punish children for their parents' sins, even to the third and fourth generations of those who hate me. But I am loyal and gracious to the 1,000th generation of those who love me and keep my commandments. Do not use the Lord your God's name as if it were of no significance. The Lord won't forgive anyone who uses his name that way. Remember the Sabbath day and treat it as holy. 6 days you may work to do all your tasks, but the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. Do not do any work on it, not you, not your sons or daughters, your male or female servants, your animals, or the immigrant who is living with you. Because the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea, and everything that is in them in 6 days, but rested on the seventh day. That is why the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. Honor your father and your mother, so that your life will be long on the fertile land that the Lord your God is giving you. Do not kill. Do not commit adultery. Do not steal. Do not testify falsely against your neighbor. Do not desire your neighbor's house. Do not desire and try and take your neighbor's wife, male or female servant, ox, donkey, or anything else that belongs to your neighbor. When all the people witnessed the thunder and lightning, the sound of the horn and the mountain smoking, the people shook with fear and stood at a distance. They said to Moses, "You speak to us and we'll listen, but don't let God speak to us or we'll die." Moses said to the people, "Don't be afraid, because God has come only to test you and make sure you are always in awe of God, so you don't sin." The people stood at a distance while Moses approached the thick darkness in which God was present. Friends, this is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. So a little over 13 years ago, I sat in the fellowship hall of a Presbyterian church in Worthington, Virginia, with what I remember being mostly crabby old men. Now, if I try harder, I can remember people there of all ages, male and female, from all walks of life. I think I just remember the crabby-looking old men because they terrified me, to be honest with you. And I remember when it came my turn to speak, I could barely get out the words, but I said them. I'm Quincy, and I'm an alcoholic. Now, it's not the funnest thing to have to say or admit. I would have rather said something like, my name is Quincy and my favorite color is blue, or I'm Quincy and I like to put hot sauce on just about everything I eat, or any other myriad of things that I could think of. But honestly, sitting there in that room, I didn't want to remember that I was an alcoholic. I didn't want to remember the past couple of years. I just wanted to forget. I just wanted to move forward, to start over and forget the past, but they made me say it. They told me I could never forget what I was, what I am. They told me it was the only way that I could get better. Remembering where I came from was the only way that I could move forward. That I had to always remember what it was like. That I had to always remember what I am. And so, even over 13 years later, when I sit in meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous and it comes my turn to speak, I still say, I'm Quincy and I'm an alcoholic. And to be honest, it's something far more important and far more defining of who I am than telling you that my favorite color is blue. And now I don't want to forget. I want to remember. I want to remember what it was like, how bad it was, and how much better it is now. When I first started getting sober, people would say crazy, absurd things like, their worst day sober is still better than their best day drinking, which I used to firmly believe was absolute nonsense. But now, with time and perspective on my side, I agree with them. but it takes remembering how bad it was. I have to remember. It goes against our natural inclinations to remember or to want to remember when it comes to the rough things or hard things in our life or the terrible things in our life. Often we're told to forget it. I've even told people to forget it. Move on. Don't live in the past. Don't let these things define you. I even tell my kids when one picks on the other and hurts the other, just forget it. Just let go. Move on. It's not important. And with some things, it's true, and it's good to let go. But with some of the bigger things, they're important to remember. Sometimes it's good to remember. In fact, I'd say with some of the hard and rough things in life, it's important to remember and that God wants us to remember. God here tells Moses before this happens, before chapter 20, that they're going to have a visit, that God's going to come and visit, and that Moses then should go and get the people ready. And then God calls Moses into the mountain again. And what's the first thing God says to Moses? He says, I am the Lord your God who brought you out of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. God reminds them where they've been, where they came from, who they are, what they are. Remember when you were slaves? Remember where you came from? Remember what it was like? Remember what I did and how I helped you? Remember. Don't forget, remember. I am the Lord your God who brought you out of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. It begins with an act of remembering. God doesn't tell them to set it all behind them and focus on the future and where they're heading. God doesn't tell them something like, yesterday is history, tomorrow is a mystery, and today is a gift. That's why they call it the present. God tells them to remember. There's something important about remembering the past, something vital to faith, about seeing the hardships we've been through and recognizing God's presence in them. There's something holy about having our past help define who we are today and where we're going. Now, I'm not saying that we should live in the past or remain in the past. It isn't that we should allow ourselves to be stuck in the past. But maybe we're supposed to recognize that the past for what it is and hold on to it and allow it then to help us understand who we are now. Now, most of my life, I've spent trying really hard not to let my past be the only thing that defines me. I don't walk around introducing myself everywhere I go as an alcoholic. When I meet people for the first time and they ask my name, I don't say, I'm Quincy, I'm an alcoholic. That would be weird. Also, I want people to know and meet the Quincy who is now, the Quincy I am now. Because in many ways, I'm not the Quincy I was back then, but I can't escape that influence that the past has had on me. I can't forget how the past then has helped forge the future I've lived into. The truth is, the things that happened back then helped create and define who I am now. And it's an important part of the story that without it, I wouldn't be who I am today or where I am right now. And the same is true then in the biblical narrative of remembering that these people were once slaves and that God had suddenly decided to free them. That God had brought them out of Egypt and out of the house of slavery. It would be easier for them to forget. Why would anybody want to remember that? Why would anybody want to remember that they were once slaves? But it's important to remember. It helps shape and form who they are. It's a big part of their relationship with God. It's a part of them that they can't let go of, or they wouldn't be the same people and they wouldn't have the same connection with God if it hadn't happened. Remember. Remember where you came from and what you've been through. Remember who you are. God tells them to remember. And then once God said, once you've done that, don't put other gods before me. And if we can remember what's happened and where we've come from and what God's done for us, it's hard to put other gods before God, or to bow down to an idol, or to use God's name as if it were insignificant. And then what's the next commandment after those is after not putting things before God or making idols or treating God's name as insignificant, it's to remember again. It's to remember again, to take one day and not focus on anything else but God, to remember and honor God. Remember. Remember. It's a powerful thing. And then you honor your mother and father. You don't kill or steal or commit adultery. You don't testify falsely against your neighbor, and don't covet. Don't desire things that other people's have. And it's interesting, and I'm still trying to unpack this myself, and I'd like to take credit for being the one who recognized this, but I think it was in a podcast of all places where I first heard this. But what's interesting is that the first 9 commandments are outside commandments. They're observable things. They're things we can observe and see if someone is or isn't doing. You can see if I'm worshiping other gods or putting something in front of God. You can see if I kill someone or if I steal or if I sleep with someone other than my wife. You're more than welcome to come over to my house this afternoon and watch me take a nap, although that would be a little weird, to be honest with you. But they're observable things. But this last one, this 10th one about coveting, you can't really observe it. I mean, I could be coveting right now. You don't know. You can't see me do it. And the explanation that I've heard is that if you do these first 9 commandments, if you put God first, if you remember who God is and what God has done, if you act justly and treat people ethically, then you won't want anybody else's life. You won't want to covet. You aren't going to want what someone else has to the point of coveting it, because you'll already be living a good life. Now, it's a slippery slope here into something like prosperity gospel, so let me be clear. I'm not saying if you do all these things, if you uphold the commandments, then you'll get everything you want, and I don't think the Bible is saying that either. I'm not saying you'll get a mansion or a fancy car or dream vacations or your best life now, whatever that means. I'm not saying that life will then be easy and without its sufferings and hard times. But what I am saying is that if we live by these rules, if we take these things seriously, then we'll be leading a fulfilling life, a better life, a good life. That if we take time to remember God and follow these guidelines or rules that God gives us, it'll lead to fulfillment. You see, here's what I found to be true. My life really didn't get any easier by my quitting drinking. It's not like I quit and my life became sunshine and roses all of a sudden. In fact, I'd say I've been through much rougher things being sober than I ever did drinking. And there have been major struggles. The main difference is I can handle them now. I have the tools to help me make it through those times and those things. Or to put it in another, maybe more practical and relatable terms on a smaller scale, I used to be fatter than I am now. A lot fatter. Let's just say elastic bands on pants were my best friends, right? I was at the point where I would get winded and have to hold my breath to bend over to tie my shoes. Stairs would exhaust me. I didn't even like standing up. But then I started eating right and exercising, and I dropped a bunch of weight, and I felt fantastic. But then something happened. I forgot. Life got in the way, and I ended up forgetting. I forgot how easy it is to gain weight. I forgot that the immense pleasure of, say committing carbicide by eating a bunch of homemade cookies at a church picnic on a Saturday night. is just a temporary feel-good situation that leaves me feeling, I don't know, sluggish and kind of gross on a Sunday morning. I forgot what it was like when I don't take care of myself. That it affects my physical, my mental, my spiritual and emotional health. I forgot how easy it is to let myself go, and I forgot how good it feels when I'm eating healthy, good foods and making my body work. And so I let myself go, and it's been a slow descent until one day last month, as I felt foggy here at work and I got uncomfortable bending over to pick something up, I remembered what it was like, how much worse it could quickly be, and how much better I felt about myself just a year ago. And so now rules have to be followed. No more do-it-tomorrows when it comes to the gym. No more Saturday night cookie binges starting right now, today. No more high-sugar, low-nutrient food. And it's time to try new things and to remember what it was like when I was fat versus when I wasn't. Because life's just better all over when I follow the general rules and guidelines of nutrition and exercise. It doesn't mean I'm going to get everything I want. I'm not going to wake up tomorrow with a six-pack. But it means my life is better. The quality of it, the content of it, how I feel about myself and who I am. And here's the crazy thing. The crazy thing to me, at least, is just in the short time, in the month or so I've been back at it, I've already noticed a change in me, that I've stopped doing things like looking at Daniel Craig or Chris Pratt or whatever ripped Hollywood celebrity you want to add in there. And I've stopped looking at other guys who have, I don't know, like more muscle in their arm than I probably have in my entire body, and wishing I had what they had, or that I looked how they looked. That I'm suddenly starting to become more okay with being me, because I know that I'm putting in the work to be the best me I can possibly be. And so they can be them, and I can be me. And they can have what they have, and I can have what I have. Because I'm working on what I have, and I'm getting to be okay with it. And so then we look at these commandments and we remember what it was like maybe before we had this relationship with God. And we remember all that God has given us just by being alive. Just by having the people in our lives that we have. Just by being here at this time in history. And we develop a deep sense of gratitude for it, hopefully. And God says, here are the rules. And they're pretty decent rules. Nothing too hard. Pretty common sense for the most part. And we work towards them. And sometimes we forget. And sometimes life gets in the way and we don't take a rest day or remember like we should, or we lie a little bit to make life seem a little bit easier. And we cheat here or there, until maybe one day we look around and wish we had someone else's life because somehow we got off track in our own life. And we aren't happy all of a sudden with who or what we are or what we've become. But hopefully it's in those moments that we remember. We remember. We remember what it was like. We remember what it could be like. What we could be like. And hopefully then we get back on the wagon and we work a little bit harder and with a little bit more commitment to follow these rules. Why? Well, I can't answer that for you. You have to have your own reasons as to why you would follow these rules. And maybe it's a little selfish and self-serving on my own part, but for me, for me, there's something about the end of the day, at the end of the day, the literal end of the day, as I say goodnight to my kids, as I lay down in bed next to my wife, as I say my prayers and reflect over my day, there's a great satisfaction or fulfillment, a full feeling I get when I can say at the end of a day that I tried my best to be a good person, a decent person, a person who tried to do the right things and to treat people fairly, a person that the people in my house, in my God that I'm talking to, can look at and be proud of. When I can remember how far I've come and how life used to be, and that people don't cringe when I walk into the room, at least not as much, that maybe I'm using my life to make other people's lives better instead of more miserable. When I can remember all that God is doing for me, my life might not be perfect, but I feel more fulfilled. And I can sleep better knowing that I'm trying my best. And that it might not be perfect. I might not have been all that successful some days. It might have been a really hard and bad day. But if I can, at the end of the day, if I can end my day like that, if I can end my day knowing that I tried my best to remember God and to follow these rules on how to treat people, then I don't want anybody else's life. I don't want what anybody else has. I'm perfectly content with where I am and what I have. I'm fulfilled. And I remember then that this is a God that led me out of Egypt and out of the house of my own slavery. Will Moses and his people remember too? Will they follow God's commandments? Will they find the road that leads to promise and fulfillment? Find out next time on How I Met Your Moses.